Long before the deluge, the land that became known to the Greeks as Aravia, or more commonly Arabia, was a centre of many, now mythical, races and creatures. The desert of Rub al-Khali provided essential trade routes that connected the many coastal, mountain and oasis cities of the land. These routes were traversed by formerly nomadic tribes that found their knowledge of the desert ideal to establish themselves as the primary transporters of the wide variety of goods produced throughout the different regions. For generations, the peoples now known as Sunstriders, or simply Striders, gained the trust of merchants, common folk, and kings. Over time, the Striders created their own mobile nation, with each group providing a representative to the Council of Elders. The Sunstrider nation had created common laws of conduct, a central library to preserve their knowledge and history, and even a centralized banking system that expedited and organized the seemingly endless transactions. This highly evolved system was an economic centerpiece of the region. It had worked uninterrupted for hundreds of years, but the entire system was now in danger. The Sunstrider nation had been under attack, and their numbers were quickly dwindling. They were not under attack from a human army or even human bandits. Their caravans were being beset upon by the hideous magical creatures known as draconic wormkin. These wormkin, or as they were called by the Striders with disgust serpent bloods, were the result of a strange and ancient magic that fused dragon and human bloodlines. They were hybrid creatures with the strength and agility of dragons and the cunning and intelligence of humans. These heinous beasts were known for their scaly skin, clawed hands and feet, and their strongest had the ability to breathe fire or ice, depending on their dragon ancestry. The unholy beasts were the creation of an elder dragon overlord, Bahamut al-Khan, who had created the wormkin to act as his loyal servants and raiders. He had carefully chosen the humans who would take part in the dark fusion, selecting those who were most physically capable and intelligent. The actual process and magic used was only speculated on, but the result was a formidable warrior who was fiercely loyal to their master. Under Bahamut al-Khan's command, the Draconics operated with military precision, striking swiftly and mercilessly at their targets. They were a terror to all who crossed their path, and their presence haunted the desert like a never-ending plague.
By far, the most unspeakable act committed by the Serpent Bloods was the practice of taking young women and men from nomadic tribes as slaves. After capturing the young Striders, they would take them back to their dragon master as offerings. The strongest would be victims of the ghastly transformation ceremony, while the remaining would endure a life of servitude and hardship. It was a fate that none wanted to suffer, many choosing to fall upon their own swords over being taken.
Despite the danger that the Draconics posed, there were several nomadic tribes who were willing to take the risk to trade with the border cities. The goods that they carried were the economic lifeblood of the region, and the rewards of successful delivery were great. However, the threat of an attack was ever present, and those who chose to brave the dangers of the desert knew they were taking their lives into their own hands. One young girl, Amira al-Qadir, was a member of such a tribe. She had been travelling for Quartesh with her mother Zara and their family's caravan when the creatures descended upon them. The desert sands exploded as the monsters came from every side, and even from beneath the ground. They attacked without mercy. It was a fury of sand and blood drowned in the echo of screams. Amira scrambled in confusion. She sought her mother, the one person who could save her. Amira darted behind a fallen camel and scanned the gruesome scene. In the distance, Amira spotted her mother. Zara was standing fearless and tall, her obsidian-tipped spear in her right hand and a thin scimitar in her left. Her steel eyes shifted from brutal beast to brutal beast. Amira watched in both amazement and horror as her mother rolled under the grasping claws of a giant serpent blood, spun deftly, and plunged her spear into the side of the monster's neck.
The blow staggered the creature, but it was not a finishing strike. The wormkin dug its clawed feet into the ground, let out a horrendous howl, and lunged again at Amira's mother.
Zara fought with a perfect mix of skill and rage. The wormkin would attack. She would parry, move, and counter. The ting and clinks of her scimitar meeting hardened. Draconic scales rang out. As Zara fatigued, the brute began to assume the advantage. Eventually he was able to secure her by the neck in his giant clawed hand. The sounds of battle seemed to instantly fade in Amira's ears as her mother turned to her head and made eye contact. Zara forced a smile and mouthed the word "run" as the wormkin thrust his second clawed hand deep into her abdomen. Amira felt a sickness come over her, a deep sickness she had never felt before. She wanted to scream, to lash out in anger. She closed her eyes briefly, fought back her panic, and regained her composure. She quickly moved behind a wagon and then raced behind the nearest dune. As she ran, she again heard the screams of her people, her family. The sand stung her cheeks and collected in her tears. She ran, through the scorching sun and deep into the night. As the morning light broke over the eastern dunes, she continued heading north toward the mountains that were faintly visible at the far horizon. Her legs and lungs burned. She eventually slowed to a walk. Despite being lost with no food or water, Amira refused to submit to her pain and fatigue. Her determination for vengeance drove her to endure days of wandering. Close to collapse, she trudged through another day of blistering heat. Finally, her energy and fluids depleted, she fell. She felt the coarse hardness of rocky northern ground beneath her knees and elbows. Her eyes once again filled with tears of pain and regret. She resigned herself in her fate. Had she fought so hard for survival only for it to end like this? Hopeless and alone, Amira's vision began to close in like two circles bringing eternal darkness. As her eyes were closing forever, she saw an image, the blurred outline of a fiery spirit descending upon her.